but it didn't come across to me like it was the best special ever. It didn't even seem almost special worthy. It really more feels like a cash grab. Like we're gonna cash in on that moment. We're gonna get post game reaction because really and truly we only care about this last 10 to 15 minutes because no one has ever seen or heard Chris Rock speak about the slap publicly. What's good people? Welcome back to Hove Views. Thank you for clicking that thumbnail. My name is Corey, and today we're going to be talking about the Chris Rock special, Selective Outrage. So, don't necessarily have a full review with the score and everything else, but I did watch the special because Netflix notified me about the special, which will be a point in a topic that I will discuss in itself, but don't have numbers to go with this one. But I do have in my thoughts about the special and about all the stuff surrounding Chris Rock, probably covering the last year. So first, the special. I do want to start off by saying that if you are a Chris Rock fan and you do like Chris Rock's stand-up comedy, then this was a good special from him. It's consistent. And that's the word that comes to mind when I think about Chris Rock and his stand-up. I'm a little bit older, so I can remember Chris Rock's classic stand-ups from the 90s. There were things like No Sex in the Champagne Room. There was Bigger and Blacker. Like I remember that album that came out from Chris Rock. There were so many stand-ups that he did way back in the days. And I can recall those. And Chris Rock's style of stand-up comedy has never evolved. It's changed along with the times, but it really hasn't changed from that same format. He relies on his voice, he relies on his tone, and his delivery is pretty much the same delivery that we've been getting over the past like 30 years of his career. Now let's look at my favorite comedian, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle has always been a storyteller. If you go back to like the early 2000s, Dave Chappelle was really good then, but his level of storytelling and his ability to tell stories has elevated and has reached a point to where he's probably one of the greatest storytelling comedians that you'll ever find. In my opinion, he is the greatest to be doing it at this moment in time. Greatest of all time is a little bit debatable because you got to talk about Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy in his prime. But Dave Chappelle is on top of the mountain at this very moment, and he's been there for quite some time. At the same time, I can give you a negative example of change, like Kevin Hart, his first 3 or 4 specials that he did that were on DVD and were widely available and people can refer to them. He had moments in history with his stand-up, but the changes came because his relatability fell off. He made so much money and he became so successful that his jokes were no longer relatable, and now he's more of a comedic actor than he is a stand-up performer. His stand-ups actually continually got worse. The delivery was the same, just the content was not as good as it originally started out being. I say all that just to reinforce the point that Chris Rock has been consistent. His stand-up has been the same. There's really no quality drop off. There's really no monumental change in his delivery or in his style. It's pretty consistent. And when I talk about Chris Rock, he's not one of my favorites. And honestly, I wasn't going to even cover this topic, but Netflix, I want to get to that point. Netflix is promoting this and they're using this as a tool to get in on the drama that was associated with the slap from last year's Oscars. I don't know if it was my own anticipation or if it was the marketing or what was it about this special, but watching it, I knew that the Will Smith related content was the content that they really wanted to push. That was the only reason that they were talking about this special being a thing that they wanted people to see, and even having a post-show reaction that went live after watching it. Like all that stuff is only for the last 10 to 15 minutes of this special, which is the Will Smith content, which is something that I'm gonna talk about just a little bit later. But sticking to Chris Rock at the moment and his special, right? So he does talk about a bit of social commentary. And for me, knowing Chris Rock from the 1990s and moving forward and seeing his career as well as his acting, I think to myself, Chris Rock doing social commentary feels weird to me. It does not feel natural. It does not sound normal. Like he had jokes in there talking about abortion, and it was dark humor. I really don't like abortion related jokes for some reason. They just never sit well with me. But I understand the point that he was trying to make with those. Like I get it. He's trying to be nuanced, and I didn't care for it. He had jokes here talking about Meghan Markle. And again, I get the point that he was trying to make here. Like, I guess he was trying to say like, hey, baby, don't be so naive. This is the royal family. But at the same time, it's like, do we need that? Do you need to make that point with that person? at this point in our history and in our culture, like, it's whatever. I'm not going to say it's a negative. I'm not going to say I didn't care for all his commentary. It just felt a little off that he was making that commentary at that time. It just feels like the timing of a lot of his stuff right now in this special is kind of weird, and I don't really care for it all the way with the timing. Now let's get to the last part, the part that most people turned on the special to see, the Will Smith related content, that last 10 to 15 minutes of the special. Honestly, I felt as though it was being tiptoed around up until the point where he really cut loose and let that topic go. And I think Netflix, again, is trying to cash in on that. And here's their moment in time where they can say, here, we brought you Chris Rock talking about that moment in history first. Like, you had to come to us to get it. So here's the overarching thought that I want to give you in relation to that last 10 to 15 minutes. When he finally went into the Will Smith related content, he started off with the self-deprecation, comparing his career to Will Smith, talking about how much he liked Will Smith and how Will Smith played Muhammad Ali while he played Pookie. And he talked about how, the Jada part of it, where everybody was counting you when the entanglement stuff came out, but I was the one who was reaching out to you when all that stuff came out. Everybody knows all that. Nothing that he said was new. He talked about the history of Will not getting nominated for Concussion, and then Jada and Will boycotting the Oscars. And I remember that year, a lot of people boycotted the Oscars. It's like Oscars so white was the hashtag that was being like trafficked and stuff. And I remember that he was the host that year and he made jokes about it. I didn't think that stuff was super personal. Whatever. All that stuff is well documented. And when you get to the brunt of what he said, even after the slap, Chris Rock himself came out and said, I'm not going to talk to anybody about this unless I'm being paid to. And this is why this special came out. Like, I'm going to talk about it on a special. Somebody's going to pay me money to get up there and talk about it. And if you track this slapping incident, immediately after the slap happened, his ticket sales shot up because audiences wanted to be there live to hear him talk about it live. This special is no different. It's just Netflix's way of trying to cash in on that moment in history, as well as Chris Rock cashing in on that moment in history and saying like, yeah, I'm not gonna play the victim, which he alluded to in his series. I'm not gonna sit up there and cry about it. I'm gonna talk about it, but I'm gonna be paid to talk about it. And that's it. That's pretty much it. Personally, do I feel like this was funny? Not really for me. I chuckled a little bit. I grinned a little bit. But as I alluded to earlier, Dave Chappelle is my favorite right now. Kevin Hart is one that I really liked his earlier stuff. Chris Rock has always been a fixture, and I've always had respect for his craft. And I've always thought that he's been one of the people that should be on the top of the list when it comes to stand-up comedians. He's been consistently good. But I didn't laugh my socks off or anything like that. Nor do I feel offended, though. The fact that there's people, talking about, oh, he's punching down on black women and this and that. And I was like, first of all, that phrase punching down seems dumb to me, but that's whoever wants to use it, let them use it. But it didn't come across to me like it was the best special ever. It didn't even seem almost special worthy. It really more feels like a cash grab. Like, we're going to cash in on that moment. We're going to get post-game reaction because really and truly, we only care about this last 10 to 15 minutes because no one has ever seen or heard Chris Rock speak about the slap publicly. That's what they sold us, and that's what we got. And it was cool. It was funny. That part of the show was actually kind of funny, but it's just adding more to that situation that I refused to touch on it when it first happened. So it's not even an integrity thing. It's just, it kind of, in my opinion, for me, looking at it, I kind of feel I rock with Chris Rock, what he said toward the end, like, you don't fight in front of white people. So like, I'm not going to perpetuate the violence incident between two of Hollywood's biggest black names. I'm not going to feed into that. I just don't want to. I'm going to let everybody else do that. So what do y'all think? That's the question. Do you feel like this special was worth it? I don't know. Do you feel like this special was actually special? I don't know. I think the Will Smith content was accurate yet nothing new at all. I didn't learn anything, nothing insightful, anything like that. That's all I have for this video. I thank you if you've watched thus far. I deeply appreciate it if you watched thus far. Consider subscribing and letting people know about this video. That's all I have. Enjoy yourself, guard your heart, and go watch something good.